So one of the things that I like to do in painting a picture is dappled light. If you're walking through the woods, the sunlight is coming through the trees and it's falling on the ground in front of you, the path in front of you, and it's got some very bright spots and some very shadowed spots, and they're all coexisting together. And as opposed to a shadow-free area or a completely shaded area, they're all challenges and they're all interesting to look at a painting of or a photograph of. But one of the things I like about dappled light, or one of the subjects I like in dappled light, is the human face. Um, so if you see somebody in the sunlight and their face is lit and their face is in shadows, that's what I'm talking about. So that's what I wanted to show you how I did today. And I did this young lady here in the garden with a floppy hat with dappled light. You see the dappled light on her face. And it's just a matter of leaving, when you're doing watercolor, it's a matter of leaving the white paper showing through. If you were using acrylic or pastel, well, pastel, you might be able to let the paper shine through, but I think watercolor is the best example where you just let the paper shine through to create that effect. So I want to show you how I did that right now. So I chose to time-lapse this, make it a little faster. It took about an hour to do this particular painting, and I just thought, keep it short, keep it just a little speeded up. It's not super speeded up. Well, it's twice as fast, I guess, as it was when I originally did it. Anyway, so the idea here was to paint a picture with dappled light, as I mentioned in the intro, and the dappled light effect on the human face is always interesting. And the thing is that the more wrinkled a person is, put it that way, the more opportunity there is for lights and darks to cascade across a face, for sunlight to cascade across a face. Now, in this particular case, this is a young woman, and she doesn't really have any wrinkles to speak of. And so I guess I cheated by choosing a younger person. Maybe I'll figure out one way to do it. I'll figure out. I'll find a day. Well, anyway, you know what I mean. I'll do it one day. So as I sketched it, you can see right here that I right away knew that I had the proportions wrong, that I had her face it's too small for that hat, and so I redid it. It's one of the reasons why I like to sketch things very lightly in a pencil. When I'm doing something like a face, or like the other day I did a shark, if you're doing something mechanical like a car or a boat, or something that has to have some semblance to the actual thing that you're painting. Now, if you're doing a landscape, it depends on the landscape. If there's let's say you're doing a landscape with a barn in it, then you definitely want to make sure the barn looks realistic. The barn looks like it's the right shape and the right, what do I want to say, perspective, compared to everything else in the painting. And I guess what I'm really saying is that every painting has its own considerations. It's its own thing, the things that you need to consider for them. So in this case, it's a woman, a young woman. She's wearing a floppy hat, and she's in a garden. And because she's in a garden, the leaves of the plants that are all around her are casting shadows on everything. And so is her hat. So her hat is a great shadow maker, and the leaves are great shadow makers. But the leaves also are great light openings for light to come through from the sunlight. That's why I wanted to do this particular painting. Mostly to show you. Now, I don't know the girl, and I don't think she resembles the reference photo I used, which I got from the internet. I'm trying to think what the name of the site was. Oh gosh, let me look for it. It's called Unsplash. Unsplash. Yes. And I just looked for somebody posing with a floppy hat. Let me see if I can find the photographer's name. Rachel Crow is the photographer who took the reference photo. Now, the painting that I did doesn't resemble the woman in the photo. And however, that's an important thing to consider if you're trying to paint a picture of somebody who will be recognizable, a family member or something. You really have to take more time than I did with this one. I was mostly just looking for the places on the face, for the lights and the darks to show up. And so I used the photograph on Unsplash, which I greatly appreciate, by the way, to the photographer, Rachel Crow. Did I say her name right? Let me look again. I'm going in and out of Rachel Crow, Crowe. And by the way, if you're looking for reference photos, first I would suggest just go out with your phone, your camera, whatever. Just go looking for things. I find things all the time. Sometimes I'll just do videos and then I'll do a screenshot of one moment in the film, in the video. So it's a nice day today. Yesterday was very rainy here in Central Florida, and I guess everywhere. It looked like, gosh, I looked at the news last night and there was bad weather like everywhere, and even earthquakes yesterday in Taiwan, and holy cow, there was a tornado. Where did I see a tornado? I think there was a tornado in Tampa. I know we had a tornado watch here, but all's well here, by the way. So, let me explain what I'm doing here. I'm using a pen. I haven't really used ink with any of the paintings I've done on this channel yet, but sometimes when you're doing watercolor, it works out really well when, rather than taking the watercolor and using the dark watercolor to make the dark spots, the spots that are essentially black, if you just take a fine pen, a fine tipped pen, ink pen, and it can be any ink pen really. You could probably use a ballpoint. I would prefer to use something like the one I'm using right there. It's called a Micron, Micron. It's made by Pigma, Pigma. It's a Micron 08 in this case. And that's just the 08 just references the size of the tip, the size of the point. And all I really used it for were the dark black areas around her face, the eyelashes. I know her eyes are not black, but for the purposes of this painting, I kept them black. And again, that would have been a choice I could have done if I wanted her to have strikingly blue eyes, for example. I could have just left them alone, and even the whites of her eyes don't have to be purely white. They can be a grayish or blue gray, or even a purple gray sometimes works with eyes. And so all I'm really doing here is adding just a few areas that are going to remain black like that. And then when you take the watercolor and you wash it over it, it just shines right through. It just works wonderfully. The plan with this particular picture, as I mentioned, was to keep the bright spots where the sunlight is being dappled. And that's where the watercolor choices, there, I'm showing you the pen, Micron. I didn't do a good job of centering my camera this time, by the way. So hopefully you don't mind that it's kind of zoomed in. The challenge, of course, was the light. Well, the challenge, it's all a matter of, I don't know what it's a matter of, but I wanted to make sure that I got the light on there. So to keep the light, of course, you keep the white of the paper with the watercolor. As I mentioned in the intro, if you're using acrylics or oils or even gouache, you can use the opacity of those paints to add light after the fact. With watercolor, once the color is down there, especially if it's a stained watercolor, you really have to leave the white paper, or you can come back and put gouache on top of it. That's a technique also that works. I don't know if that's going against the grain of the purists who want the watercolor paintings to be only watercolor, but I've already violated that by using pen and ink. So and you can see just a few strokes, you can already see the shadows and the lights. Of course, there's going to be a lot more shadows by the time I'm done, but that's the key, is to try to figure out where the light should be, and the reference photo plays a big role, because the reference photo shows you where those light spots will be, where the sunlight is hitting the face. And even though in reality the face is not pure white, in the context of a painting, it works out nicely. Again, especially with a watercolor painting, it works out nicely to just leave the white paper, and hopefully you agree. But you know what? You can experiment. You can do all kinds of things. I did a couple of paintings where I put down an underpainting of like a yellow orange and let it dry. And if you do that with a paint that's not going to be water soluble or reactivatable, if that makes sense. One of the things that James Gurney uses is casein. That's one of the paints he uses. So you could try that. But you could do it with anything. You could actually use pastel, soft pastel, and then break it down into a liquid form by putting some alcohol on it, and then let that dry. And then you can paint over that. You have to do it very thin, but it does work doing it that way. And same thing with acrylic. If you're using acrylic paint, you can put down gesso before you start painting. You can color the gesso, stain the gesso with paint, and then do the underpainting like that. And one cool trick is to do an underpainting that is a complementary color to the final colors that you will be using. And I never ever go to extremes with this. I always keep it very super loose, super rough. I don't try to paint the painting twice, once complementary and once with the actual colors. Anyway, in the context of this particular painting, the idea, as I've already mentioned, is to keep the lights and the darks and make sure that they're contrasting. Maybe just a little in some cases, and maybe a lot. In this case, her hair is really dark hair. And I wanted to make it dark, but I didn't want to make it like a pitch black through and through, like you're painting a wall. So I did mix in a little bit of orange and some of the burnt sienna. And I think I also used yellow ochre, pretty sure. And it's all from the watercolors from the Winsor and Newton pan watercolor kits that I've been using for a long time now. In fact, I probably have to go to Hobby Lobby and buy some more. So hopefully you guys are doing okay. Hopefully you didn't have, well, you probably had bad weather yesterday. It seemed like the whole country had bad weather. Up in the Northeast, where I'm originally from, I always pay attention to what's going on in New York because that's where I'm from originally. So I watch the news, and I still have some family up there and friends that still live up there. whenever I see the weather. I always, sometimes I miss like cold weather. Sometimes I miss the snow and stuff. But I mean, it's already, what is today? April 4th. Can you believe that they were predicting snow? I think for yesterday, not in New York, but I think up in Maine and maybe Vermont, New Hampshire, that area. Wow, it's kind of late for snow, isn't it? I think Robin told me they had snow in Wisconsin also, like last week or so. All right, so you see her face? Her face is coming around, right? The shadows, you can see it already. And you know, it's kind of a mixture of orange and red that I'm using right there for her face, but very watered down. And again, the painting on a greeting card, so it's a very small surface. It's 5 by 7. And I don't know who I would give this to as a gift. Maybe a gardener. Maybe somebody who likes to garden would be a good person to give this as a gift to. Yeah. We'll find somebody. It's amazing to me how I'll do a painting and think, well, nobody's going to really want this one. And next thing I know, either somebody's asking for it or I just find somebody to give it to. It's just the way it is. So, hopefully you're doing good with your painting. I appreciate the comments that you all leave on the YouTube, and I wanted to give you a way to connect with me. I don't think I have anything yet. I have to figure out how to put a link on there to maybe I should make a Facebook page or something. I do have an Instagram account, and I have a Facebook page for my personal stuff, but I don't know if you guys want that one. It's not Poppa Paints. That's what I should do. I should create a Poppa Paints website or Facebook page. So Poppa, the name that I choose to use, if you're new to the channel, it's because I'm a grandpa. And when my grandson was born, my son, who is his dad, wanted to know what I wanted to be called. And so I always called my grandfather Poppa, and it was spelled Poppa. I'm not sure why, but that's how it was spelled. All the birthday cards I ever got was from Poppa and Amma. I had German grandparents. And so Amma was spelled, I think it was spelled O-M-A, like Oma. And I think a lot of Germans spell the grandfather's name as Opa, O-P-A. But we never did as a family. It was always Poppa. So that's me. I took that on. My grandfather's been gone since the 70s, but his name lives on in me with my grandson. It's such a great feeling. You go over there I go to my son's house and my daughter-in-law's house, and there's my little guy. And he comes to me, gives me a big hug, and he calls me Poppa. And I know that's not going to last forever, but it's just a very sweet thing. One time, I said to my son I said, you know, when you were little, I picked you up all the time. And the last time I ever picked you up, I didn't know it was going to be the last time I'd ever pick you up. And it felt sad to say that. And I was telling him this at a restaurant. He had taken me out for my birthday several years ago. Now, he was already in his 30s at this point. And so, just being the stupid guy I am, I said, why don't I try to pick you up now? And then I'll put you down, and I'll know the last time I picked you up and put you down, rather than not knowing. And he laughed, and I tried, and of course I failed. I didn't have enough strength to pick up my son at 30-something years old, but it was just funny. So the moral of that story is that time does what time does, and it goes away. I wrote a song called I don't remember what it's called, but the words are the time between dreams and memories is only the blink of an eye. The time between dreams and memories is only the blink of an eye. So dream sweet dreams, dream sweet dreams, for sweet memories and time. And then I recorded that. It's just a very short little ditty, and then I put some sound effects of birds in the background, and it's a sweet little song. Sweet little song, like a sweet little watercolor painting. So as you can see, now she's coming to life. There's the burnt umber, and it's kind of a mixture of burnt umber and yellow ochre, and just adding it to the edges of her hair so that it looks like a little bit of the hair is backlit, just a hint of it. And then the other trick to making this composition work is getting the background right, so that the background can contrast with the subject, which is the girl, the young woman in the garden. And I have my camera aimed in such a bad place, but I am adding some folds to her shirt, some hints of light and shadow interplaying with each other, the way it always does on fabric. And it looks like I was bumping my desk a lot because the picture is kind of shaky. So I apologize for that too. I think there's a way you can fix that, but I'm not going to try that. It might ruin it. All right, so here, well, all I want to do is just give myself a couple of reminders of where I want some leaves. And I'm not really worried about them being perfect or perfectly shaped or even in focus, like that wet spot right there. But then once I got that done, I thought, well, let me just add the sky. There it comes, this little bit of sky. And then I'll add the rest of the garden. And then the picture will be done. This was a very satisfying one. Oh, and the other thing was just to keep a little sliver of white paper showing between the background and some of the surface. You see right there on her hat, I kept that little sliver of white right there. So it looks like light shining onto the hat, and light shining onto her neck, light shining onto the brim of the hat. There we go. Nice blue sky. And what I liked about this is that I was slow enough. It's fast forwarded right now. It's time lapse, but I like the fact that I gave it enough time to dry. I didn't have to use the handheld dryer or anything really. I just kind of worked with it. It's exactly as you're watching it right now, except it took twice as long. So what I'm trying to do with the channel is to meet some challenges. If somebody asks about painting a face or painting an animal or painting a scene or rocks or the desert, I've had a couple of different requests, and I kind of put them all in a file here on my computer, and then when I get to them, I'll get to them. Some of them I've done already in other paintings, but not on this channel. So, because I've been painting longer than I've been doing a YouTube channel. Yeah. So, I don't know. She looks familiar to me. I really did not capture the likeness of the woman in the reference photo. And I really honestly wasn't trying. I just wanted to get the features and the light. You see the light on her face it's just right there. If you have a lady wearing one of those floppy hats that are made out of straw, those hats let in little tiny dots of light, and that's a fun way to handle dappled light also. And there's all different ways. Somebody could be standing in the shadow of a palm tree, and then you get the shadows from the palm fronds that cast on their faces and on their shirts and or even just on a wall behind them. It's always a challenge to try to get that done. There's something I like a lot about the watercolor look. I did so many paintings in pastel. I like the way pastel looks. I like the way paint looks, like oil paint and acrylic paint. I like those too. But there's something, I don't know, something spontaneous, I guess you say, about watercolor. It's got a very cool look to it. And the one thing I tried to not do is to replicate a photograph. I don't want my paintings to look like photographs. I want them to look like paintings. But I'm sure that back in the early days when artists were hired because there was no such thing as photographers, then the goal was to make the painting look exactly like the subject. And it was probably considered a real honor to have a painting done. And I'm sure the only people who got the paintings done were the rich or the family members or the friends of the artist. But now, we have cameras and we have photography, and so art no longer has to look like a photograph. Art now can look artsy, and you can be impressionistic, you can be abstract, and it still is a viable form of art, a viable form of bringing some joy to somebody. That's what I love about these cards, is they bring a sense of joy to the people who I give them to and the people who buy them. I get so many nice notes from people who've written me and said, "Hey, can I buy that painting?" And they'll have to look for it because I hang them up in my room, and I just have a whole bunch of them sitting around. So somebody says, "Can I have that painting of that landscape you did?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have so many landscapes." So I have to look for it and try to figure out which one they're talking about. Then I'll always send a photo. "Is this the one you mean?" And it's either yes or no. "No, it's not that one. It's this one." And they'll take a picture of a screenshot of the video I did, or of a posting I had of the artwork. All right, let me go back to the original audio, and thank you for listening. All right, here comes the rest of this right now. Okay, I think I'm done. And that's going to be the girl in the light, the girl in the garden. How about that? The girl in the garden. All right. All right, see you later.